And people are going to be coming in. People are going to be coming in, and sometimes they have to leave. If you have to leave early, that's great. We, just check we're going to have a recording, and as a registrant to this program, you'll probably have notices about, when the recordings are done, so you can reflect on them. My name is Taupori Tangaro, and a number of you look very, very familiar. And this is Mōkaulele. Mōkaulele is, again, a platform, and it's to grow leadership. It's a platform to grow leadership, to see ourselves in leadership. For, if you've been reared in the school system in Hawaii, you know that from preschool all the way, sometimes to graduate work, it's rare that we're prepared for leadership. We're prepared to receive leadership, or we're prepared to study leaders. But, how do we become leaders? We need to strengthen that. Seeing ourselves, is that a duty downs? Oh my Lord, to see ourselves in leadership and get beyond waiting for the next leader to come by. So Mōkaulele is simply that. So people might be thinking, oh, well, I don't see myself in leadership. I'm humble, I'm ha'a. Well, we like ha'a. We put ha'a in dance. We need action. And when we look at our traditional schools, like hula, like farming, fishing, weaving, there's strong leadership principles there that's taught. There's high expectation. The calibration of output is high. You get trained in hula for many years, and your goal is to get to the front row. And then sometimes they even take you further. You become a kumuhula. In other words, you become a leader. So when we look at canoe voyaging, it's the same thing. Every person in that community is a potential leader, and they put in a lot of effort to develop the leadership of those individuals. So when we look at our traditional schools, leadership and the development of leadership and seeing oneself in leadership is not a question, but in academia, sometimes it is. So that's why Mōkaulele is part of what the University of Hawaii is doing as we contribute to the well-being of indigenous communities, beginning with us in Hawaii, because the university is in Hawaii. And we want to make sure that our people have all the things they need and to build that capacity to lead at all levels, and not just in the traditional forums. We use the framework of Ka'au, a framework that I learned from the Pele and Hi'iaka framework. It's, as Snowbird and I were talking earlier, we spend many years learning the chants and the dances and the rituals, all from that. But what was not clear was that the story itself had all these coded messages about how do we develop our own leadership? How do we get into our own potential? We didn't know the story of Hi'iaka and Pele were actually designed to be like a mirror, a reflection of who we are and where we are in our life journeys. So this is Mōkaulele, and it is to strengthen our indigenous communities in higher education, but it's also to strengthen ourselves as parents, as community members, as individuals. And it's about seeing ourselves in leadership, however you define leadership, and get away from the idea that my job in life is to just support the leaders. Sometimes we need to do that, but also one day we wake up and guess what? We're the leaders. So Mōkaulele is to help grow that. So that's it. That's the intro. I'm in Panaeva, so live in Panaeva. Hi'iaka came right through here. She can fight the mo'o right out my yard where I still lamoa right now. And some nights I can still hear it, the mo'o. I don't know. I don't think she'd finish him all the way. I think it's some left behind. But I live in a mystical place, and I thought this is our last Mōkaulele of the season, so I thought to do it here from home. I want to invite Snowbird Bento. Aloha. She is, I remember her for many years. She used to dance hahani mai and float. So every time I hear Honey Mai, I only see one dancer, and that would be her. And amazing how some dancers just own that hula, and 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 that's it. So that was my attraction, my initial trigger, like, oh my God, there's something beautiful about this woman. And lo and behold, yes, there is many. So Snowbird Bento, aloha nui. I cannot just say Snowbird. I have to. It's like rock star. Yeah, Snowbird Bento. It's like
It goes together.
they go together.
It goes
So
together.
so we're gonna follow this framework, and those of you in the audience, you have, I'm a college professor, so I want to make sure that you're not just listening at her story. The purpose of Mōkaulele is for you, her story to reflect your own. Okay, just like when we experience the story of Pele and Hi'iaka, we don't just listen to that story. It reflects our own strengths and weaknesses, advances and setbacks and mysteries. Yeah. So you have homework. So as we're going to go through the five phases of ka'au: hua, ha'alele, huaka'i, ho'ina, and ha'ina. I want you, if you have the ability to take notes, when we ask Snowbird, share with us your hua, and she starts talking about her childhood, I want you to take a few notes about your childhood. Okay. When I ask, oh, Snowbird, your ha'alele, that point in time when you realize you're going to get on a canoe and you're going to journey in this direction. I want you to identify a direction and take notes so that, but if you're driving, no, just listen. Yeah. Okay, dokie. Enough of me. Snowbird, au here, oi. Please share with us, who are you? Where are you from? And and tell us about your childhood. How did it prepare you to be you?
Mahalo. Oli ana wau no ka ho'owehe ana I ke ia
Oh,
wā
yeah.
o kākou mahalo. E lani ko lunai, he honua ko lalo. He pili Hawaii ko lunai ho, he pai Hawaii ko laloa e. Ka puka komono I tua, ka puka kilono I alo. Nā ko o nei e kono aku ia o kou pakahi e tō mō mai. Nā ko o nā e kipa mai, aloha mai, maloko mai, e kipa mai,
Oh, yeah.
he hale. Ia, aloha ahi kako e nā hoa makamaka o nei mau aina nani au I loa a kamako mau kupuna. O wau o Snowbird pua nani o Kalani Bento no paua mai au. O paua he awāwa ma ka mokupuni o ahu. Ma waina konu o nuuanu me a waiulimu. He aina lo'i ke ela, he aina kaua, he aina o he aina I loko o'u e pa'ai I ko'u na au. Oia no ke kahua o ko'u ola. No leila. Aloha mai kākou. Mahalo ia oe e Tangaro for allowing me to be here with you folks. And mahalo to all of you for joining us from near, far, and in between. I do recognize many of the faces and names. And for those of you who I have not yet had the pleasure to meet, aloha mai, aloha kāua. I think one of the major things I think about when Kumu asked me to be a part of this Mōkaulele series is I think of my grandparents. I was such a lucky kid because I had all four of my grandparents growing up in my life. My father's side of the family, they're Bento from Hilo. And found out more information about my Bento side this past year. And then his mama is Akana from Ka'u. She comes out of Ka'u, but she was born and raised in Honolulu. So her Ka'u roots weren't very deep at all. And then my mama's side, the Whitfords, my mama is a Whitford, her father is a Whitford. His great-grandfather was the first Whitford to come from Exeter, Rhode Island, and is known as the progenitor of all the Whitfords in Hawaii. We're the Hawaii branch, literally. And he married a woman named Milika Anapu. And together they had my tutu man, Kualua, and then, of course, my grandfather who raised me, Solomon Anapu. And then on my grandma's side, she's a makali'i and a keahi from Maui. And so that's kind of the kahua of my life, if you will. I'm the oldest grandchild on the Whitford side. I'm the oldest great-grandchild on the makali'is and keahis. I was raised primarily by my maternal grandparents and my tutu lady. Her name was Esther Keahi. And she married a makali'i from upcountry. And she lived till I was 13, and she was a manaleo. And I was lucky enough to be her mo'opuna that grew up with her. I went everywhere with her. She lived in an area called A'ala. Most people only associate A'ala with a lot of homelessness and a lot of not so great and positive things. But when I was a small girl growing up, my parents worked, my grandparents worked. And so I primarily spent time until I went to school with Tutu Lady. And she would take me, we would walk from A'ala Park by where she lived all the way to Pua Lane. If you guys know Pua Lane, Merite Housing, that's where we went. My mama them grew up in Merite. My daddy grew up in Paua Valley. He was born and raised in Hilo until he was 6, and then they moved back to Honolulu. So I have roots that have me in Oahu primarily, but connect me to Hawaii Island and Maui in particular. The first image that came to mind when thinking about my kahua and where do I come from, who do I come from, was a bowl of poi. A bowl of poi. I don't know how many people remember what it's like to eat out of the same bowl of poi with your tutu folks. To sit all around the table and partake out of the same bowl. You gotta have rules for that, right? We have rules for that. First, make sure you lick that spoon good and the bugger is clean before you stick them back in the poi, because nobody wants to eat your dregs. Right? Make sure that the spoon is clean. When all the food is po and the table is ready to be cleared, don't wait to be asked to clear the table. You stand up and you do. If Tutu said, perhaps you might help me wash the dishes, they're not really asking that question. They're telling you what they would like for you to do. And so, in a sense, I grew up with a particular set of rules on both sides of my family. I understood what it was like to sit at a table with multiple generations. And I was a precocious young kid. Oh my goodness. Precocious. Like, I guess I couldn't get away from asking questions and questions, tutu and questions and tutu and questions and tutu and questions, right? And once I made the mistake of bothering her, interrupting her conversation she was having with her older cousin. And I said, Tutu lady, I gotta tell you something. And she was ignoring me. And I didn't take the ignorer part. I wasn't understanding that nonverbal communication. And then I reached up for her shirt and I was like, Tutu. And she went huli. She looked right down at me and she said, Kamali'i. Children should be seen and not heard. Especially when I'm talking to other adults. You wait your turn. And then I came back with, but why? I think we can all attest. We've probably all done that. But why, Tutu? And then, you know, growing up, kuli was the words I heard a lot. Kuli. Now, what I didn't realize was that while she took such good care of me and fed me, and you know, we went all over the place with her, that the agenda was hers at that time. It wasn't, she didn't shift everything to accommodate my life and my wants and my needs. She still had things that needed to be done. And if she only shifted to me, then she wouldn't be able to achieve those things and get it done what needed to be done for the ohana. But I never know that growing up. I just thought, oh, my tutu lady, she's strict. And but I will say that being the oldest great granddaughter of hers, when she was on her deathbed when I was 13, of all the grandchildren, the great grandchildren, I was the one that was asked to go into the room to see her, because she did very particular things. She said to my mom, when my mom was hapai with me, you're gonna have the baby close on my birthday. My mom goes, I'm not sure if I can dictate that, Tutu. And sure enough, I came just shy of 8 hours before her birthday. She was a particular lady who loved to tell stories, and yet she was a quiet lady. But my grandma, her daughter, is the one that told a lot of stories about our family, who we're related to. You know, so-and-so is so-and-so, and then at this church is so-and-so, and then this is our ohana through this person, that person, this person. Because for Tutu Lady and my grandmother, it was the importance of relationships. Who are you connected to? Who do you come from? Where do you come from? So from that side of my ohana, I learned the importance of sitting at a table with more than just my hohanau, with more than just my cousins. We took our meals all together. Tutu folks, Makua folks, keiki, at the same table. I learned from them that participation in things like civic clubs, halepule, sign waving. I can remember holding signs by Halava for Governor Waihe'e when he was running for lieutenant governor. I remember holding signs, like that was part of our civic duty, Tutu folks would say. But I also learned a lot about music, and through the music, storytelling. My grandpa Bento, my Portuguese grandpa, told me all about his growing up years on the big island of Hawaii, how much he loved Hilo. He would describe places so well that the first time I flew to Hilo and the first time I started to really go around Hilo, I was like, oh, you guys had this place over here, yeah? And did you guys have the Crest Fountain? You guys had this, you had that? Because my grandfather would tell me all those stories, and he would tell it over and over and repeat it over and over. Why? So that when he wasn't here, we weren't going, wait, Grandpa, what was that again? Wait, Grandpa, what was that again? He made sure to add in details every time and to repeat the stories all the time. No matter how many times we asked to hear the story about the one-eyed akua, he was going to tell it. No matter how many times we asked him about growing up as a young Portuguese boy being hanai by Hawaiian family, he was going to tell it. And so the power of remembering who I am and where I come from was instilled by my grandparents and by my tutu lady. Not realizing that as I became a teacher, that part of the teaching methodology of our people is tell, repeat, repeat until you can teach it. Then makahana kaike. Then when you can teach it, now you know it. And so all of those things are part of, I guess, the formative years of knowing who I am, where I come from. I never had a question about that. I never had a question about what I knew my talents to be. Because in our family, we were expected to sing. And we learned how to sing in parts. by listening to my grandparents and their siblings and cousins sing in church. I learned it by memory. We would memorize off of how we're hearing the words being sung, and memorize your part and memorize the words. And so when I came into hula-ness, shucks, it felt like the perfect fit. And so my hula journey really starts with my grandmother, Bento, learning heui in the kitchen of her old house in Paua. It was the first song I ever learned. And I swore to the Lord above, I danced it till I was 16 because my grandma was the youngest senior citizen. She would always want to go senior citizen club in Kaimuki, the big red one in Kaimuki. And we would go there and she'd go, okay, baby, go dance. Now, my grandmother was not a hula person. She did not dance hula. She was not a kumu hula, but she loved to pick up her ukulele and her harpsichord. Anybody in here know the harpsichord? She had an electric one, gling, 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 like that. I learned how to play that too. And sing out of handwritten notebooks that she would handwrite all the words and put the chords. And so it's the song I knew growing up, and believe it or not, I actually taught it to all of my nieces, my sister, all of the girls in our family have learned heui.
So Snowbird.
Yes.
So, as a mahalo, after all these, I like to think that your grandmother trained you, all of your tutus trained you for this very moment. Yeah,
right.
We had moments ago. Wow, they really, they created this. They're a huge part of who I am and what I'm able to share, yep. And how I see and how I listen and how I respond. So in an honor to your hua, can you sing for us the first verse of Heui?
Oh, right away. Sure, Hikino. Sure. Grandma would sing like this. Heui no oike ike mai. He pua ho he no ikala. O e no ka ui aloha. He pua I mili mili ai. That's how she would sing. And she was the one that would go, ooh, 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 in every chorus. In every chorus.
Oh my Lord. Isn't that a beautiful thing? That that song, you can never just hear that song without being back in the kitchen.
Oh, absolutely. Cannot. Yeah. Every time I sing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And how many of you have a special something, whether it's a food you cook, or eat, or a flower you smell, or a sensation, something sensate that takes you immediately back to a special place in your childhood. What I would like to do is I want you to get to your text or your chat, and I want you to put me that one word what it is. Yeah, but don't put it yet. Rico, hands off your keys. Okay, so I'm gonna count to 5. So you can type it in, but don't press send yet. Okay, are you ready? So this is the one special thing that is your magic totem. It takes you back. Okay, what would that be? On a count of 5, press send. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ha! Look at you guys, bust me up now. I said, oh, my glasses, my bifocal is working overtime. What made me think to do this? Hamburger gravy. Rico. Dang dang. What's dang dang? Dang dang. Gloria, what is that? Is that some kind of ethnic food?
Filipino. Dang dang Filipino dish.
What is that dang dang?
It's a mixture of four corner, beans, pork, and talong, and eggplant.
So
with bagaong.
Oh, okay. That bagaong takes you right back to the womb. Take you right back to the womb. Look at some of you guys. Peanut butter, gardenia, jerkins.
Jerkins.
That tells me a lot. Thank you, Duri. Love you. Janet Jackson. Kimchi fried rice. Look at, you know what we're doing, guys? This is the magic. Sometimes we're looking to Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings for some kind of magic, but here it is. These are the things, sour poi, the scent of gardenias, it immediately transports us. So when we need to get transported, all we have to do is, to be passive is, oh, you smell that gardenia, oh, I think of grandma. Or if you need to think of grandma, go and get that gardenia and hope it's in season.
That's right.
So like I told my daughter one time, she was young, I have this really dreamy child. They're all kind of dreamy. Daddy, why do Christmas time we always make gingerbread? I said, so that's because if when I did, she goes, oh, Dad, you're so Puerto Rican. But I said, that's the way that I'm dead. All you got to do is make gingerbread and I'm right back with you in the kitchen. And she was about 8 years old. And she goes, wow, that's magic, Dad. I said, yeah, it is. That's why I'm doing this. That's why we do it every year till it gets down into your pores, into your marrow. She goes, but you're only going to come around Christmas time. Mary, you can make gingerbread anytime you miss me. Okay. So, but see, this is the magic. Smell of limu at low tide, my Lord, that transports you. Let us never forget that, because sometimes we need to get transported back to that magic moment. Yeah, and so that's the power. That's the power of these memories. Now, and interestingly, the smell. Smell is our strongest sensation that can trigger memory.
Mm-hmm.
Not our eyes and not our ears, not even our taste. It's actually smell so even if you see the word and it triggers a smell memory, it takes you right back. So it's very, very powerful stuff here. So that was your hua. And some of you folks, when you're listening to Snowbird's hua, you began to think, geesh, what was my hua like? And similar, I too was with my grandparents, got to listen to, I knew how to disappear with the old people. So I could even sleep with them. And, I'm the oldest child, so I was slightly spoiled. But with that came a lot of duties. I didn't know, and they told us the stories, that within those stories were the things, the information our families would need. And then I didn't know that as a child, you only hear the stories and you enjoy them. So you want to hear them again. But you don't know that you reach a certain in your 50s and you begin to realize that in those stories are all the knowledge systems your community needs. So it's an interesting. So how many of you were similar to that? Or you were the bratty kid that was sent out because you were so kolohe that, and because sometimes, you got to start from the outside of the house. Yeah. Some of us were treasured kids. Some of us were just the pupuka ones left outside, and you had to find another way. Yeah, you had to find another way. Yeah, it takes all kinds of leaders. So I want you to think about those moments and what kind of child do you think you were? Reflect back, because the kind of child that you were and the conditions that you were lived, the conditions that you experienced and how you interpret those conditions actually makes who we are today. And oftentimes we think our childhood has nothing to do with it, but our childhood has everything to do with how we think and act and how we move and how we feel. So the next part of this ka'au is the ha'alele. The point when we realize, I want to journey in this direction. And I'm going to prepare myself for this journey, and I'm going to get on a canoe and I'm going to journey. Now, you did talk about a teacher. You did talk about being a kumuhula. You can choose any, and many of us have many journeys. Yeah, we are on many canoes at one time. So choose a canoe and let us know, why did you think about that canoe, and when did you actually seriously commit to journeying in that direction on that, in that area?
Perfect. Many kipuka, many kumus over my life who have just really been great influences on me. But I think the place where my ha'alele began really was 1993. I was a senior in high school. And January 17th was the first time I had attended any type of march, any type of gathering such as that since the year of the Hawaiian in 1987. I danced in the Aloha Stadium in the year of the Hawaiian when that whole place was full. So if there was a prep part to my ha'alele, that was it. It was being in that place and seeing all these kumuhula up on the stage and being a young kid. I think I might have been like 10, dancing au'aia for the first time in public and just with hundreds of thousands of people, and realizing that I was a part of something that was so huge, and that these are my people over here. They look like me, they act like me, they sound like me. I'm not an outsider. I felt embraced. And that led to me being a senior and attending for the first time the march and hearing many, many different speakers at Iolani Palace. But I think the one that really kind of turned my head and made me jolt and uncomfortable was hearing how Nanike say the words, "We are not American." It jolted me to my core because I was like, wait, what are you talking about? Like my father was in the military and my uncles served in the military and my grandfather served in the military. What are you telling me? And that was the beginning of my own desire and need to know more, to unravel the things that I didn't know the full spectrum of, that I realized how sheltered I was. And it was from that uncomfortable feeling that pushed me into things, made me run really towards things Hawaiian. It made me run towards things Hawaiian because of those things that Topori just talked about. Remembering my tutu folks and remembering the smells that brought me to them or brought them to me when I needed them, and understanding what that was like. And accepting that I didn't know enough. Either I wasn't given the bridges to make those connections, or I was given a version of the story that was age appropriate for me, so that this is all you really gonna know. Am I gonna push myself further? So that's really where the accepting of the journey started for me. It was, well, if you're going to try and find out what this feeling is about, and what are all these things that people keep talking about, and what is ea, and what is sovereignty, and what is the big deal about Olelo Hawaii, I didn't even want to take Hawaiian language when I got to high school, honestly. I told my dad I was going to take French because I wanted to parler français, and I wanted to go to Tahiti and find me a beautiful Tahitian to marry. For real. For real, right? And I also took French in high school. So I took French and Hawaiian language in high school, took the placement exams for both, and placed high. And then I ended up in Tahitian class with my teacher at the university. My dad told me, take Japanese, Bird. You take that one because you're going to have one job. He goes, I don't want to see you getting put into the back of the paddy wagon singing, Hawaii ku o ne hanaue. For real, my dad told me this. And I remember at the back of my mind thinking, I get it, Dad. I get it. This is what you know in your comfort zone. And I don't mind to be outside of my comfort zone. It was the first time I realized that I didn't mind to be outside of my comfort zone and to be in a place where I was questioning what's happening around me. And then if I'm questioning this, then I better go figure it out. And I better do my due diligence. And that's really kind of what got me onto my journey.
Right.
And I think about the ritual of it all. It's the information, right,
Yeah,
from the environment that informs the direction I'm going to move into.
so an interesting, and I hope you guys were able to follow this thread. She asked the question why after she heard this, this statement. She, as age 10, she's in the nation, hundreds of thousands. Oh my gosh, that was a phenomenon. We don't know when the last time something like that happened in Hawaii. and it happened, and she was in a center of it, and she felt whole, she felt embraced, she felt part of the bigger picture. Oftentimes we don't know how we belong to the bigger picture, or even if does one even exist. We feel so disenfranchised. The other thing is, now she goes to the palace, and she hears this speech, "We are not American," and it just rambles her. Yeah, because it starts to, her marbles start to go. But she asks the question, why? Now, wasn't that part of her trait system as a child, with her tutu always asking why? Why? Did you know that some of our people, and maybe some of our kids, they don't ask why? Or if they ask why, it's the topical why, and not a deep why that was going to make them figure it out. It's just why. So it's the surface why. It meets a need, but they don't it doesn't constitute a journey toward it. So here you find this woman, Haunani K. Trask, says, "We are not American," and it just rambled you. And then you began to assess, why am I feeling this way? Was I told only part of the story? Was it, and this and this, and so all of this is the ha'alele, because now you're beginning, you state it, you're very clear when you say, I don't mind being in the uncomfortable side. I'm going to journey in that because I need to unravel this. And so that unraveling, so you see, it's interesting. When Pele has her dream, she meets her lohi'au, and she comes back and she asks her sister, her sisters, who is going to journey, and one, she asks them all, but one is going to journey. And this person journeys, and the story doesn't tell us that she asked why. In fact, Hi'aka doesn't say. So some people start their journey without asking why. They just find themselves in a journey. But some of us are very, very lucky, because we begin the journey with knowing, why are we going to journey? What's on the other side? How come I'm feeling this way? And you're going to head into some very uncomfortable situations. And the lucky thing is, you're prepared for that. Many of us, we start the journey, but the first big wave, we're out of there. We're backpedaling. We're like, oh no. I would just marry my third wife, and I'm going to try that again. We would just go on, try another kind of relationship finding. So thank you for making very clear your ha'alele.
Yeah.
You know that you need to unravel. You had to leave. You had to leave what you're familiar with. You had to ha'alele. You had to go beyond your grounds of familiarity, and you put a date on it.
I did.
So great. So now that we're in the Huakai, you're on your canoe and you're in deep water. What is your journey like? Can you tell us about some of your advances, some of your aha moments when you go, yeah, I'm lucky I did this. Lucky I actually asked the question. Lucky I was I never go to the mall, and I went to the palace, because the palace had my trigger, the trigger came from the palace. So can you talk about some of your advancements, and then also talk about maybe some of those moments that made you question, is this journey too much for me?
Yeah. I put a date on my ha'alele, but I also realized that my entire life up until that point led up to that point.
Yeah. So migrations, yeah. When
That's
the migrations ha'alele, when the canoes leave, they don't just leave overnight. They take sometimes 30 years to prepare for that launch.
Yes.
So it's not an overnight thing. It takes many years to prepare the people and the products and the canoes to do. So, yeah. So if you're thinking ha'alele is a very small piece, it actually is part of the hua. Your hua begins to prepare you for that ha'alele. Yeah. Okay.
And so I would say then that as far as advancements in Huakai, it's really because of my love and my passion for hula. And my kumu holoua, is a very academic centered type of person. He's very strong in education. And so he pushed us to understand what we were dancing from the get-go. You know, some of the things that we had to make sure that we did that helped me in my advancement of asking the why questions about who am I? Where do I come from? What does this statement mean when you say we're not American? Because I was raised to believe otherwise, and started to marry with my hula training. But I think in many ways it was already the destiny that was set for me, because the hula training just made so much sense from the ohana training, from being in Halepule with ohana. It made so much sense in my na'au. And I can remember once, you know, my grandma Whitford, she is my last kupuna that was with me that we lost. She was hilarious. My Grammys, she was always making jokes, always cracking jokes. But she was the one I mentioned earlier that knew all the familial connections. Who's connected to who by how, and this one come from this land, but this one is your cousin from this side, and la la la. She said to me, you know, Bird, you cannot know everything. You cannot know everything, but you were always an inquisitive child. And she said, but what I can tell you is this: learn to trust your na'au. If you're not supposed to be someplace and you went go over there and something went happen, you knew better. And you still went go. You made that conscious decision. Or something told you, don't go to this place, and you never go, and then something went happen there. You knew not to go. That is your intuition. And you have to learn to trust your intuition so that you know where you need to be, because someday you'll have to make decisions about things that may put you on the other side of the fence of the people you absolutely love and adore. And when that hard day comes, you're going to make that decision based on the things that you've learned, based on the environment that you've been around and why it's telling you to do a certain thing, and based on your na'au. Your na'au tells you gotta be there, then you better be there, because it's for a purpose. And that was her way of saying, trusting in kupuna, trusting in spirit and in your spirituality, that it's part and parcel of our physical person and our emotional one. And so when I think about the advances that I made over the years, it really was about trusting my na'au that I was making the right decision to be someplace or to do something. And then also trusting that part of my comfort would be found in my relationships with my ohana, in my relationships with my ohana hula, in my relationships with my kupuna, those seen and unseen, in understanding that I'm a keiki of this land. And this is it. This is my kulaivi. This is it. This is where I belong. And yes, I do have Portuguese. And yes, one of my bucket list things is to go to Portugal and visit the lands of my Portuguese kupuna. But for now, I got to settle for Waiakea and Kaiviki, because that's where they were. At least my kupuna Kualua and Kuokolu. But the advances really was about me being comfortable with me and me really knowing who am I and in what way can I give back to the community who has raised me? In what way, shape or form? And so I would say then that my biggest advancement in my huaka'i, in my journey, and it continues to today, is that one of my strengths, thanks to strength-based finder books that we got to do sometimes for work and other things, that one of Snowbird's top 3 strengths is that I love to learn. I'm a learner. And so I'm always looking for, I guess you could say, what is the next pie? Have I learned what I needed to learn here in this? And have I embraced the lessons that I needed to learn here? And then if it doesn't allow me to elevate and expand who I am, then I must not have learned the lesson right. So that's really the kinds of things that have continued to help me on this huaka'i part, because I know that for the rest of my life, I will be a learner. But my first strength is actually strategic, which means I'm able to see multiple things. For some people, it could be chaos. For some people, it could be disorganized. It could be disarray. But I can see the chaos and find the way through it, or reorganize that universe so that I can get to the key part of what I need. And therein lies where I found my pilina to being in aha, or this idea of creating a space that allows us to elevate and expand to the next level of our learning and our existence. And understanding also that I have a lot to do with how I grow or how I don't grow.
Ah, perfect. Now, you did talk about na'au, and, and your grandmother, she nailed it when she says, make the decisions on things you've learned, experience, your na'au. So, sometimes when you hear some of our kids say, well, I just go with my na'au.
Yeah.
And you as an adult, you're looking at it and say, well, your na'au is uninformed, because, when they actually use that card, they throw that card down, I'm gonna just go with my na'au. Sometimes they forget that the high functioning na'au is about connection, but the connection comes through experience, comes from doing. So it's not a disconnected intuitive sense. Intuition means to be connected.
Yeah.
So what are you being connected with? You're being connected with experience. So all the experiences that we have to go through, if we can not just experience them as a flat experience, but we can begin to look at connections. And this is where I mentor. I'm a bitchy mentor in academia because I have no tolerance for sad stories, because they don't get me anywhere. I'm very sympathetic, I'm very kind, but I don't deal with the sad story thinking. We're on a journey and we have the same hours, we have a lot of work to do, and but one of them is every class you got to take, it doesn't matter if you like it or you don't like it. Our job is to find a connection. How is this class going to advance my big mission in school, my big mission in life? Your big mission is not to get a degree. Your big mission is to use this degree to achieve elements of your life. So that's part of how we got to get our students out of the idea that my dream is to get a degree. No, that's not your dream. Your dream has to be bigger than that degree. Your dream has to be huge. And the huger your dream is, the more it will, people will relate to it, because it will shore upon other people's dreams. And the more people that can support each other's dreams, the better the achievement. But to grow connections, we're finding that people that have a difficult time growing connections, they cannot see connections. So when they're in a place of chaos, they can't deal with it. They can't. But the more connections that we grow, or the strength of building connections, the more we're able to understand situations. So when I tell my daughter, I always got to reflect on my kids. If I can talk about people's kids, I'm going to talk about my own. And I used to tell them about chores. Doing a chore at home is not just about doing a chore because daddy wants the house a certain way. This is to teach you how to contribute, how to be committed, how to be considerate. This is, it provides you a discipline. You create a discipline. You don't have to love emptying compost. You just have to know that compost, the emptying of the compost is a contribution to a larger unit.
Right.
Not everything. I did not like alagahaga. That hula was just my nightmare. And Lani just used to give me a hard time because I couldn't kui. I for some reason I just hated alagahaga, but I couldn't. But there was all the other dances that I liked. So was I going to let one dance hijack my journey because I didn't like it? So my goal was to create I had to reinterpret I don't like that dance into a challenge. I'm going to master you, and I'm going to dance circles around you. And that seemed to help me. And I had to build a connection. So, what we want to do, we're going to run through the same exercise, guys. We're looking at the journey and those moments where you have these conflicts, and you got to really reassess, how are you going to get beyond it? Or are you going to let that conflict hijack your entire journey? Is it going to be an opportunity? Hiaka always talked about there are so many ups and downs.
Oh, yeah.
But she had to always remember the bigger purpose of her journey. So those ups and downs were not mountains, they were just little hills. So can you share with us one of those, what was one of those key words or key phrases that got you through in those moments when you had self-doubt? Whether being a parent or being a partner or being a student, or those moments when you're having your conversation with yourself and they're talking to each other. And the shadow voice is saying, oh, you're a loser, you ain't going to do it, you're going to fail again. And the other side says, no, I have to do it, I have to do it. Can you share with us and put it in, if you're comfortable? On a count of 5, we're going to have you just press send. We want to see what was that key word or that magic phrase that got you to remember that there's a bigger calling. And this is not a mountain. This little glitch is just a little hill to go over. So are you ready? Are you at your keyboard? So on a count of 5, just press send. 1, 2, 3, eha, elima, kaumi. Press. Just show up. That's your kuleana. Keep your eye on the ball. Mohala, kuleana. God is standing next to me. I can. For me, it's pule. Follow your heart. Keep your eye on the ball. See, look at this. Intentions, mustard seed. Okay, she's talking kauna.
I can explain that. I can explain.
Yeah, I want you to explain that. So guys, you guys see where we're going here? Sometimes we have our own magic. We have the potion that's going to get us to the next level. And we cannot lose that. Yeah, we cannot lose that. We have that in our journey bag with us. Keep those phrases, keep that, because sometimes it doesn't matter what other people think and say. Sometimes it's the lack of not talking to ourselves that we become highly reliant on the wrong words or the wrong experiences. So informed intuition is where we want to go with this. Snowbird, can you share with us a mustard seed, as well as maybe share with us one moment that you're comfortable with sharing that was perhaps a weak moment for you in your journey when you had to really butch it up there. I'm from the ghetto, so sometimes it comes out. I apologize. I don't mean to offend.
Shucks. There's 2 moments that come to mind in particular. The first is, I was always a big girl growing up. I was athletic, surf. I loved to boogie board. That was my preference. Though we did do big board, tankers. I used to surf a tanker. I was into sports. I did basketball and volleyball, and it was constantly being told that I didn't fit the mold. I didn't look the part. I was too big to be a basketball player. I was too slow to play basketball because you gotta run. At Kamehameha, we had to run up Snake Hill. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Snake Hill, but that bloody hill is enough to make anybody want to give up the moment you're standing at the bottom of it. And it moves in an S, and it's like this. And I swear to the Lord above, every time I saw Snake Hill on our run patterns, I would just want to throw a tantrum and cry. And literally it was, I would talk myself through it. One step in front of the other. Let's go, Bird. Let's go. I was my best friend in that situation. I didn't listen to anybody else. I listened to my inner man, and I could not give up. And so mustard seed comes from the Bible. My grandma used to always use this statement that if you have faith like unto a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Mustard seed. If you have that much faith in what you need to do, you can move mountains. And I carried that with me throughout. So yeah, I mean, just to pass senior year PE, I had to swim 54 laps in that pool over there at Kamehameha. And down back is one, guys. I swear, I had to talk myself through that. And I had already done a public swim. They called it the no-fin swim, where you swim from Magic Island down to Kewalos and back. And I missed my timing in a minute and a half. I was a minute and a half over the time I was supposed to come in. So I had to redo it. And after I survived that, I thought, shucks, if I can survive this, I can survive anything. Because with all of that came the name calling, came the uncomfortable things that happened as a child. I remember being called Snow Cow and being teased quite a bit. And then when I ran for Miss Hula, many people thought, oh, that was so good for a big girl. Those kinds of expressions. Oh, you did so too bad you was sitting down to dance. I got that one. But by that point of my life, I had gotten to a place where it didn't bother me anymore. And the reason it didn't bother me was because I knew who I was and I knew what I could do. And I knew that when I get to my ha'ina, I'll talk about it. But understanding what struggle is in all its facets, whether it's being bullied, whether it's self-sabotage, whether it's you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, you're not this, you're not enough. And understanding that all of the lessons in my life told me, starting with the embrace of my kupuna, you are enough. You are enough. And you have what it takes to overcome. And that's really what got me through the biggest challenges of my life, continues to get me through the big challenges. Knowing who we come from and knowing that you come from strong stock. And, you know, you mentioned it earlier, Tapori, about the migrations, where our kupuna migrated too. We're living examples of that. And so if they could make it, we can make it.
Yes, we are the descendants of those that have arrived.
Right.
You know, and sometimes we forget, what does that mean? Or how do we translate that? We are descendants of those that have arrived. We have no records of those that didn't arrive because their story ended in the ocean. And so sometimes we need to, you know, when our students, I cannot go, oh, woe is me. Woe is me. You know, you ever saw a woman giving birth? Oh my
Right.
gosh, you know, I mean, we're descendants of, there's miracles every day that remind us of how much potential, how we just want to live. We have to be desperate to live well and not just survive, you know. So, you know, guys, at the bottom of you guys' reactions, there's emotions, yeah? You can look at emotions, and there's a raise your hand piece down there. How many of you in your journey, in your life's journey, can remember one moment when something was triggered that begged the question, am I worthy? Should I be here? Can you raise your hand? You know, raise your hand. You know, if you've experienced that moment where you go, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I'm not good enough.
Mhm.
Yeah. You see, now we're only 39 people. We had 45, but I think some of them had to go eat already. They're getting hungry. But how many other people like us are out there? How many of our students would raise their hand if we asked that same question? How many of us don't have the strength to be our best friend? So we do anything to just find the best friend. We marry as much people as we need, hoping to marry the best friend. You know, lucky thing, I would stop at my second wife. I found my best friend at my second wife. But you know what? I love that you said, Snowbird, I became my best friend. Nobody ever told me that. I thought friend meant somebody outside of me. Luckily, I'm a natural loner, and people, you can laugh if you want, but I'm near extreme introvert.
Yeah.
I'm not a card player. I never had to agree. I never had to fall in the agreement of other people, my peers. So sometimes that isolated me and it pushed me even further. But I was a perfectionist. So I could dance. I could dance disco. I could dance hula. I could dance anything. So that got me a place on the map.
Right.
But outside of that, I wasn't sure. And I told myself I don't need friends, but I think inside I wanted friends. I wanted to know that I was embraced, that somebody cared for me.
Mhm.
There were times that I wasn't sure. And so, this question, your experience, guys, as we look at Ka'au, as we're growing Ka'au in leadership, sometimes ask your students or ask your children or your grandchildren. Sometimes you cannot deal with your own children. Yeah, you got to deal with, but you have your nieces and nephews you can deal with. Ask them, how many of you realize, are you your best friend?
Mm.
Are you your best friend? Do you hug yourself? Do you tell yourself, no, I shouldn't do that? Oh, yes, you should do that. Have a conversation. I'm going to use that. I had to be my best friend. I had different ways of dealing with staying strong in my weak moments. And I was teased a lot also because I was just too soft for the typical male in my family. And, so I started to stay away. That made me want to isolate because I didn't fit. I didn't fit wherever I went. I just didn't fit. That's come halal was really good for me because they don't care. They don't have time to see where you fit. You just got to learn the dance and you learn the chant. Nobody cares where you come from. And, so long you know how to act a certain way, you can dance a certain way. I found my pu'uhonua there, and I loved it. But outside of hula, that was a scary world that I had to deal with. Um, so that was those dark moments when you had to look at Snake Hill and you prove yourself and you had to prove yourself again and again. And those things that people say that really go deep and it hurts. And it begins to hijack the journey.
Mm.
Isn't that interesting that what people think of us sometimes is the reason why we leave a journey? And how many journeys have we left because of what people think of us? So I'm not going to even ask you guys to raise you guys' hand over there. And then you guys get all crying at me and send me emails. You made me depressed during Christmas. Jesus is going to get born, but I'm all depressed. Tangaro, I'm going to send you coal. That's all you're going to get for Christmas is coal. But I want you to look in the mirror. The next time you pass the mirror, don't blur your eyes. Look at yourself. Because if you don't see yourself, how do you expect your world to see you?
Oh, absolutely.
Look
I
at
would,
yourself and ask that question. Am I my best friend?
I
Are
would,
you my best friend? So go, Snowbird, go for it.
just listening to what you're just saying now, Topodi, I would also add that for as much as there were people who were negative in my life, I also had very positive role models and people who let me know always that they were there for me, but that I also had the ability within my own self to pick myself up again.
Yeah.
That I didn't have to wait for an invitation for somebody to say, "You feeling better? You're ready now." I didn't have to wait for an invitation. And so kind of in the way, that has been the mentality that has driven me the most.
So
And
here it goes. This is the exercise. I
yes,
want you to think about, you know, in Hiyaka's journey, she wasn't only faced with nice fairies and the supporters. She was faced with challenges. The challenges is what made her survive. And when we go into survival mode, you'd be surprised what comes out of us. Okay. So if what we're going to do is tonight, right now, we're going to thank one of those monsters in our lives. One of those monsters that you could, if you would like to punch their throat if you saw them again, you know. But we're not going to do that because we realize that we should actually thank them. So we're going to play around with this. You don't have to believe me, just try it. So I want you to think of a real person that was horrible to you. And you're going to just, don't tell me the name, first and last name, because that could be my relative, yeah? And then we have, but you know, because it's really not them. It's the fear that they triggered in us, yeah? So what we want to do is just put their initials, and you're going to say, I release you. Or you can say, I thank you. You made me stronger, okay? So put that in, so type in the initials, please do not give names. Put those initials in and just say, I recognize your contribution to who I am. Thank you. Thank the monster. Thank you. Sometimes you got to thank the monster because the monster is not them. The monster is what they trigger in us. Okay. So you ready? On a count of 5, you're going to press and we're going to say all these initials. And if I see my name over there, because I was your Nightmare College teacher, you're going to get it. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Release them. Look at that. Look at that. Look, Tutua. That's a relative. I told you. The initials. Okay. RL, you made me stronger. So you know what it's beginning to do, yeah? It's beginning to get you away from that and say thank you. Well, you can look at, that's what it means. You know when we have nightmares in our dreams, our nightmares have a message for us. And so sometimes we got to stop running from those nightmares and we got to just face it. And you'd be surprised. We're going to learn from it. Now, the next exercise is somebody that was just your mentor. They got you at the right day when you just needed, you know, that's when you go, oh, God or gods, whatever your belief system is, you got to help me today too. If I don't get through today, I'm not going to make it. Do you have somebody or something, or sometimes it's even an animal that comes and reminds you of love and strength? Can you put their initials there? Again, don't put names, and put the initials there and say, thank you for being there when I really needed you. Okay, on a count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look at all that. Look at all that. Okay. You guys are just lovely. Your ho'ina, Snowbird.
yes,
Oh, the ho'ina is when the canoe is coming back. It's
yes.
when Hiyaka is coming back. You know, she never go to Kauai and then she went to Niihau and then she went to, you know, Alaska. She came back. She never exit the scene. You know, she actually came back, and she came back a transformed person. She left a little girl, she came back a goddess.
Right.
So as a result of your journey, her experiences made her the healer that she never knew she was. See, so in our traditional medicines, it's hard not to see Hi'iaka in our culture of healing because she became that, and it was her journey that resurrected that in her. So as a result of your journey, what are you doing? What are maybe one or two things you're able to do as a result of your journey for your community?
Oh yeah, I think the most important part of the ho'ina was my my return to Kamehameha and to teaching and to working with young people and to understanding that the way that I help my lahui and the way that I help my community to grow is by instilling in the young people that I work with that they are strong, that they have what it takes to be not just successful, but to understand what success is. Because success is different to everyone. For the ohana whose keiki always wanted to sing but only sang in the bathroom, the first time they sing out in public, that's a win. But it's also seeing yourself at the fullness of your potential. And so when I was in the classroom for 27 years, that was always my overarching goal with every student, whether the light turned on or not for them in the time that I had them. But that one day, when something happens, it would trigger that part of them that's already been planted. It was already planted and has been nurtured and has been watered and cared for, so that at the end of the day, this is about sustainability of all of our resources. Our kanaka one, our spiritual one, our aina one. If you love land, you love yourself as much.
Yeah.
You cannot have one without the other. You aloha aina, you love yourself too, because you have to. If I am not good with me, I cannot be good for anybody else. And my haumana in halau and my haumana in the everyday thick of it all, 27 years of teaching, almost 400 kids a year, that's a whole lot of influence. And so for how do I make my community better? This was my window. This is the way. And it's powerful to see someone when the light goes on, when they go, oh, I get it now. And it wasn't because so-and-so had to tell them. It wasn't because so-and-so had to do a dance to convince them. It was something that triggered in the na'au, which is where we connect our physical self to our emotional self, to our spiritual self, and going, I get it now. And as soon as they get it, then they know where they're going to go, and they follow their own, they're ready for their own ha'alele, and they're ready for their own huaka'i. And I'm constantly, I think I'm going to constantly be on huaka'i.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? They go together.
Yeah.
And the ha'ina or the ho'ina, they go together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And really what that does is I'm ensuring when I look at my students and I say, you guys are going to be the leaders for my mo'opuna who's coming behind you. What kind of Hawaii are you going to leave for him?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of Hawaii am I leaving for his children? At some point, we have to take responsibility, whether or not we're the reason why we're where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
Take responsibility for the things we can change and shift. And sometimes all that takes is a redirect. When you're on the va'a, just paying attention to the signs and go, oh, got a redirect. Now everything's going this way. Okay, yeah. I got another way to get there. Here we go. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, this shifting the narrative, and that's what we need to do, is to shift the narrative. a couple of things. You talked about aloha aina, you got to aloha yourself. See, sometimes that gets blurred. Sometimes we get busy with all these civic movements, busy with the community because we don't want to deal with our inner world. So sometimes, and that's not sustainable. And sometimes we wonder why, you're getting sick. People are getting sick because, they're servicing, but they're not servicing themselves. So when we talk about indigenous leadership, those are one of those areas because, in our indigenous world, we put so much value on the service to others, but we misinterpret that by meaning we value ourselves less. We got to feed everybody before we feed ourselves versus we feed kako. And making sure I got to feed myself. If I'm going to continue feeding the community, if I'm sick, how far can I help my community?
Right.
So, if you like aloha aina, if we say we're descendants of the land, we cannot just fight for the mountain and not fight for our own health.
That's
that's the hard thing, because sometimes it's easy. It's hard to lead the outside world. Sometimes it's even harder to lead the inside honua. To the point where we just want to be busy with the external lives because we don't want to deal with internal. It's just too ugly in there. So we're going to fix everybody's life, but ours is in shambles.
Right.
So, when we talk about indigenous leadership, it's not about being a slave to your community. It is about being a servant to the kako. It's not oko, it's kako. We have to throw ourselves in that mix. We cannot just do this for them. We have to always be there. Make sure we make a place on the mat for us. We have to be able to sit on the mat. We cannot just tell the whole world, the lahui, go sit the mat. And you're not sitting on the mat. You got to go sit on the mat too. Or here's the canoe I made for you folks. You got to get on that canoe too. So that's one. The other is you talked about the huaka'i. So you notice we begin with hua, and then you have your ha'alele. Yeah. So your hua is this here, and then your ha'alele, you journey into the huaka'i. The huaka'i, there's again the word hua. You have ka'i means sequence. Yes. So when you're on a journey, it's interesting. One journey triggers all these other journeys. So there's multiple. It does get complex. It's not just, it's a true migration, because when you migrate, there's not one canoe. There's many canoes that are moving in tandem. And sometimes they're staggered, just because in case the big waves take these canoes down, these canoes can still go. So it's a brilliant metaphor for us to use. And many journeys will get triggered. Okay, but I love that point you said about taking care of ourselves. Don't take ourselves out of the mix. Aloha aina means love yourself as much as you love your mountain, not any less. Now, isn't that a different shift? The other thing I want to talk about is, what would happen if our students walk into our classes and we say, okay, you guys all in here, you guys didn't register my class. I don't care if this is a required or an elective or what, but I'm going to teach you. I'm going to pour into you my soul, because you're going to be leaders. I don't have time to be dealing with the non-leaders. So whether you see yourself as a leader or not as a leader, I'm going to train you as if you're all leaders. I wonder how people will come to the learning. Because we were never told we can take leadership classes or we can take leadership workshops, but unless we can see our hua, our formative years, and then our journeys in our communities, unless we can see the big connection to the bigger picture, we're not going to get it. You can take planning workshops, listening to the foreigners of the other side of the world telling us how to be leaders, when it might work for them, or elements of what they say might work for us, but we have it all right here. Look at our little group and all the stuff that we're able to share. Your ha'ina. Yeah. Guys, we're coming up with the Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can start putting it in the chat. We're going to save this chat so we can give it to her so she can see, what some of the things has been triggered in the discussion. But if you have any questions, you can also put it in in this chat here. Your ha'ina. Ha'ina ia mai na kapuana, the end of the song. What is the most important message? So what do you want us to walk away with tonight? If you could ask us to consider this one thing, what would be the ha'ina?
I've thought about this for a few days actually, and as I was getting nervous for this whole thing, but I thought about all the many wonderful tutors and teachers and kumu that I had in my life, role models, and the importance of role models, so that when our keiki see their leaders, they see themselves in their leaders. Yeah, when our keiki look at us, they see themselves in us. And really it was, I always say that I have Mo'opuna, I have keiki. I am blessed that my brother and my sister-in-law allowed me so much of an influence in the lives of my nieces, my 3 nieces, and now my oldest one has a Mo'opuna who's 4, and I'm his puna. So I would say this, and I'll say it through sharing this story. When it was time for my niece to give birth, she could only have 5 people in the room. And it was a no-brainer that the first one would be the dad of the baby. And then she wanted her father and her mother to be in the room. And then I thought, for sure, I'm probably not gonna get a spot in that room. There's only 5 people allowed. But she told me, Auntie, I want you to be in the room with me, please. And I said, oh, okay. I didn't ask her why. The precocious kid in me never asked her why, but I wanted to. I was dying to ask her why. Because that's how I am. And the reason I didn't ask her why was because I knew, instinctively, I knew why I was going to be in that room. And it's probably not what you guys are thinking. I wasn't the coach. I wasn't holding on to her. I wasn't helping her to breathe. I wasn't pushing her legs. I literally was the camera holder. They chose the worst one to be with the camera because I'm really bad at catching things, because I'm very much in the moment type of person. So I don't want to be holding this and going, go babe, go, or something like that. And all you see is the camera going like this because my hand moving, right? But it was in that hana that it allowed me to step back and to look at my family and to see how each person prepared themselves in their own ways for the arrival of this new keiki. And in that moment, understood that I would chant him into this existence. And so I did, as she was going through her final pushes, and you could tell she was. With the camera in my hand, I just started to chant. And I started to chant all the things that I hope for his life. And connect him to his kupuna. So I chanted their names so that they could be in the room with us. And the last thing I said, as soon as he went puka, was I called his name. And I thought, imagine if every single one of our keiki had that kind of experience coming into this world. How much more powerful that they would feel. How much aloha that they would know deep, deep down in their na'au, that's truly why they're here. And I know that it is not everyone's experience. I know that. But how much more powerful could it be if our children did know that? Because if we're looking to raise the next set of leaders, we need to be thinking, how would I want them to treat me when I am in my haumaka'iole stage of my life? How do I want to be treated? Do I want to be seen as a burden? Or do I want to be seen as this hulu kupuna that they will cherish and hold until I take my last breath. When I look at leaders, I'm not looking for just people who akamai here, but I'm looking for people who are solid in their na'au. Because they're not leading with just their akamai, but they're not only leading with their emotion, they're leading with it all in totality. And we need that. We need that. And if we know that's what we need, our mo'opuna surely will need that too. So that when the next 3 generations come behind them, they'll understand who they come from. And they'll understand the power that they come from and the love that they come from. That aloha is just, that aloha is the mustard seed that can move mountains.
So you know this puana, it's interesting because I think all of us here know puana. Haina ia maiana ka puana. It's a brilliant thing. We've been doing it. It's part of our thinking culture. And we already know, if you know, haina ia maiana ka puana, that's the end of the song. You know, some of us, we just say, oh, that's the end of the song. But we don't necessarily think about that. It's the reason for the song.
Mm-hmm.
The puana is the echo, the message, the most important message that's coming through that song. That song, we can look at that song as a ka'au. Yeah, we can look at this through the framework of ka'au. We can look at the song as a, you know, it journeys from first verse to, you know, to the end verse, and there's all these things that happen. And the last verse is very, very important. But what would happen if we began composing our song with the last verse?
The puana in the beginning.
Begin the song with your last verse.
Because now you have intention.
Yeah, that's the intention. So that's what I'm going to ask you now. This is your last homework. No worry, your certificate is in the mail. You all get A's. It's non-credited, so it's not going to go very far, but it's going to affect your dreaming. And when you look in the mirror, this is going to affect how you see yourself in the mirror.
Oh yeah.
What is your puana? What message were you born with to bring to this world? What do you contribute to this world? What would you like to know? What would you like to say to your grandchildren? Let's say great-grandchildren. You know, and for us, grandchildren, it doesn't mean they only come from our body. Sometimes they're grandchildren through halaus, through the civic organizations. Families have been redefined. We redefine ourselves. We don't care. We move definitions around to meet our needs. So families have been redefined because we have different makeup. So whatever definition is your family, what do you want to leave? What is your final message? So think about it. Can you put something there? I don't count to 5. Doesn't have to be even a full sentence, but it should be something. I didn't tell you guys this is a luau. Everybody got to bring something to the party. So I never like you just listen to her story. Go, oh, Snow. I wanted Snow to trigger you. Yeah. So what is your message? And it doesn't have to, you know, don't feel like it has to be well thought out, and it has to be, you know, just the, so, you can use pigeon. I don't care. But we ought to have a message. We have to have a puana. Yeah. So what is that puana today? Yeah. What do you feel now that, you could leave as a message for a child that may need you? Okay. Are you ready? We're going to create your puana here. Now, I don't want you to make a shirt that says #puana. What's your puana? Okay. But here goes on the count of 5. Kahi, alua, akolu, aha, alima, go. What's your puana? Imua, you can't make. Okay, aloha kai oya e. Oya, nourish, pono, imua. Sometimes the scenic route is the route that you're supposed to take. That's the puana. You make a difference. Oh my Lord. Yeah, the practices of our kuna cannot die with us. There is room for them in our future. Pass on the mana. Look at this. Look at this, guys. And you guys didn't know you guys was going to do all this homework, yeah? You guys thinking, oh, you guys are going to light candles and give you guys self flowers and everything. Know God, keep him in life, love one another. Look at that. Love one another. How powerful is that? Aloha, ho'omau, you are loved. Look, listen, learn, love, laugh. Laugh, yeah. Live with empathy and compassion and in truth. Moku au eola, aloha, full of love, that kind. This is a beautiful practice to be shared and such a powerful experience. So you see, guys, if we were all in a canoe, we have a lot of information because it's based on our experiences. We don't want to forget our experiences. Don't leave your experiences, especially the hard ones, because the hard ones have probably more to teach us about ourselves than the soft ones. The soft ones usually just echo what we are already. The hard ones kind of force us to see what we're not, or what we could become, or what we need to be. So, don't live just in the pastel palette, get into the dark, shady ones. We've reached the end of Mōkaulele. This is the end because it's the end of this season. And we're going to do it again in coming season. But the beauty of this one is we're right at Kanaloa. Kanaloa is the winter solstice is right before us, and so we're sharing these stories. And I've been doing Mōkaulele for a number of years, I think, and but for some reason I'm growing. I'm growing this, and I'm getting a little bit more. And then Zoom is not so foreign to me. Although I did have a headache because I couldn't get my Prezi to work, so I had to abort my Prezi and just go into the Zoom. But Kanaloa is our deep unconscious. Yeah, it's our deep unconscious, and the longer the nights become, the longer opportunity we have to linger with our dreams. The sun doesn't come up so early. We can linger with our dreams. I invite you to sleep in a little bit. Take a holiday. Think of your dreams. Only you know your dreams. And be your best friend, but also be your strongest critic. If you're your strongest critic, you're not going to be afraid of what other critics have to say, because you're already beating yourself into perfection. You have to be both. Be your joy and be your nightmare. Be it all. And and hug yourself. And really look at yourself in the mirror before you put on your eyelashes. Yeah, Makua Wahine over there. Before she put on her eyelashes and the glue gets stuck in her eye. Before you put all your, before you put on all your persona, before you dress yourself in the way the world knows you. Look at yourself and say thank you. And thank all your tutus. We don't have to agree with their decisions, but interestingly, their decisions allow us to have this conversation today. Whether we approve of them or not, their decisions on how to raise us brought us here today. You think about that. So we got to say thank you, even to those monsters. You don't want to marry them again for the third time. Yeah, don't marry a monster the third time. That means you're not paying attention. Learn first time, so you don't need to go through it again. Divorce is expensive and it's painful. Yeah, so just do well. Know yourself. Know yourself well. That's your duty. That's not somebody else's duty to know you. Okay. We have to grow leaders, guys. Hawaii needs good leaders. And we don't want waha. We need practice behind it. That's what Snowbird said, the experience. Atutu said, you have experience. You got to teach it. That's how you know when you teach it. So it's not enough to have experience. We have to export that experience out for the people so that we can, and when we teach them, that's when you cannot be a kumu if you don't have students. Kumu means you have students.
Yourself.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. So, and student and teacher, they're symbiotic. One is not above the other. We need each other. Students trigger us. We trigger them.
Yeah.
So in the context of the university, I always have to bring it back to students, but again, look at them as leaders. But before we do, we have to see ourselves as leaders. So if you're one of those that says, I'm not a leader, I'm going to support it. Well, can I invite you for Christmas? If you celebrate Christmas, give yourself a gift that keeps on giving. Stop saying you're not a leader. And why don't play around with the idea that you are a leader and see how the world around you shifts. Okay. Now, Snowbird, my hugs to you and thank you. And my wife just got home.
Yay.
And yeah, she's on our island. Everybody, this is my wife. She's my best friend.
Hello, hugs.
Hi, Tita.
Yeah, and so yeah, this is her. And yeah, okay, and there she goes. Don't run, girl. She rolls sometimes down the stairs. You just still yet. She does. And she goes, I'm okay, I'm good. Okay. You guys, we got to grow our leaders. So the next child you see, the first child you see tomorrow, look at them. And in your brain, contribute leadership to them. We're that magical. Don't just, and sometimes it's the nuisance child that will make the best leader. Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask why. Don't be afraid to ask why. In fact, when Pele came to dig craters on all these islands, the god Wakea says, who is this person digging holes all over? And Pele said, Ovau no ia. Yeah. Elua kai kina wa ene Pele ke ha olo ela ke o ke lele la ilu nei lalo ka veve ka o lalo e akia ni na o akia o vai nei aku e eli nei o vau no o Pele na no eli aku kalua ni ha. So when the gods ask, who is this digging the holes? You have an opportunity and an honor to say, it is I, my name is Pele, or my name is Tangaro, my name is Snowbird, my name is Moani Keala. It is I that is leaving this footprint to give life to others. Own it, guys. Have a happy season. Snowbird, please stay on board. Gail, if you're here, still stay on board together. But guys, if you have questions, you have Snowbird's email in the chat. Thank you for lingering. There's a reason why you're here. There's a reason, there's some message that came through tonight that was directly for you. Know what that is, write it down, and continue. Again, we're all descendants of survivors. Whether you came on the ocean on canoes or through the deserts on camels, we're descendants of survivors. So let's not just survive, let's live vibrantly. Hui ho no kako. Bye bye. Hi, Gloria Ann. Nice to see you. You get zooming in from YPO. YPO Valley get a kind already. They get Zoom capacity. Oh, look, Akiko, aloha. Moani, aloha. Kavehi, Sandra McGuinness, aloha. Duri. My Lord. Okay, and oh my goodness. Nani Kupihe, thank you. Leilani, aloha. Atsuko, hi doggy. Ruby, thank you. Duri, you have to go now. Bye-bye. Love you. Chico. Look at it. She's not going. She's cooking. She left us. She just left the scene. Duri. Ahui ho, guys. Bye-bye, Kavehi. Okay, dokie. And then Kaui Peralto, ahui ho. Gail, look your cousin, Kaui Peralto. And then there's a Haoli Viritua. Haoli Viritua, you can stay on. Is that Haoli Viritua?
Yes,
or just somebody by the name of Haoli? Okay. Ruby Hamili, bye-bye. Ahui ho. Have a nice holiday. Ruby? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Snowbird. It was just a nice way of bringing it all in. And Snowbird, you know Auntie Gail, yeah?
So I know Auntie Gail. How are you, Auntie? Good to see you.
Yeah. And this is Haoli Virito. Haoli.
Hey,
Your canoe brought us, your canoe and Ho'iu back to us, yeah? We send him off into the world and he goes off, but he comes back. I love this kind of kid. Yeah, they come back home. Nice. Thanks for joining us, Haoli. Snowbird, thank you for putting in so much effort and attention, and your Portuguese side, making sure you you know, you overachieve. Um, you just had a beautiful way of building the connection, and just nailing it, and your grandmother's saying, you what sticks with me is use your na'au because you an experience, you and learn it and teach it, then you know.
Mhm.
That's what we've been always doing with our kids, we're not going to train you all to be kumuhula, but that don't mean you can all not have a hula to teach your family something. I'm giving you this hula so that it's not going to make you a kumuhula, but you as an uncle, you can teach your kid, your nephews this. You have something to give them. So, thank you. Resonated a lot. This is the most that we've had the group interact, and we got a lot of information, and I think my adrenaline was up because this is our last, but because you just have the ability to trigger so much actions, and they gave us all. I've never been so interactive with them,
It's good.
and so